and welcome to Bizarre and Spooky. My name's Barb, I'm your host. On this episode, we'll be sharing more Canadian haunted locations that you can visit on your next vacation. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, I recommend you starting with that episode first and then come back to this one. On this episode, we will be talking about a spirit boy that can bend cutlery, bone fragments being found in the basement, and blood oozing down walls. This has piqued your interest. Then stay tuned. Walking along a train track at night can be scary for multiple reasons. You could be mugged, you can be hit by a train, amongst other things. Seeing strange lights as you're walking alone in the dark would definitely add to the spookiness of the situation. In a village of St. Louis in Saskatchewan, there is an abandoned train tracks that is said to be haunted. As people travel along the area where the train used to be, they have spotted a single light following the path of the tracks. As the sightings continued over time, high school students decided to do a project about how these lights could actually be nothing more than visual effects on the highway. This explanation, though, has not curbed the attention of the town folks that still believe the track is haunted. They even created a postage stamp that features the ghostly lights of the haunted train tracks. The old Sppoky factory was built in Gastown area of Vancouver, British Columbia in 1970. Number 53 trolley car is sitting inside the restaurant and still seems to have a conductor. Staff members have seen a figure dressed in full uniform sitting in the trolley at night when the restaurant is closed. As a conductor died under the restaurant in an underground collision, another story says that the ghost appeared when the trolley was installed in the restaurant. Another waitstaff has saw a young boy running around during her closing shift. The boy's spirit had been bending cutlery. But when the waitstaff member went to tell the manager about what happened, the cutlery was all back to normal. A friend of the general manager was sitting down for their meal, and they were looking over and saw a little girl with a balloon sitting at the table beside them. They had a long chat until someone had walked by the table and the girl disappeared. A visiting psychic believes the artifacts that the owner had brought into the restaurant is a cause of the ghostly activities. The psychic also stated that there is a vortex at the back of the restaurant that could be the doorway that the ghosts are using to enter the building. Whenever you're near or inside a tunnel on Warren Road in Niagara Falls, Ontario, with a lit match, it is said you can hear a little girl screaming. The limestone tunnel was built in 1800s as a way to drain water from the nearby farmlands, but the farmers in the area decided to use it to transport goods and animals safely under the busy railroad above. Local legend says that the little girl was burned to death in the tunnel. There are a few versions of the story. One is a nearby farm had caught on fire and the girl ran from her home in a blaze and passed when she entered the tunnel, trying to look for help. Another version is a farmer had lost custody of his children and out of rage killed his kids, but the little girl managed to get away into the tunnel before he caught up with her and burned her. The last version has a little girl being raped by a drunk on his way through the tunnel and buried her remains to get rid of the evidence. If fire from a match scares the little girl, and that's why she screamed, is heard. Fort Erie sits on the edge of the river and was built in 1764. When the United States declared war on Great Britain in 1812, the Briton-Canadian troops occupied the fort at the beginning of the war, but during the war, Britain dismantled the fort and moved it inland. the U.S. troops took over the ruins, but was forced back by the British and was rebuilt the fort. In July 1814, the British troops lost 1,000 men when the U.S. troops captured it in what is known to be the bloodiest battle of the war. The U.S. held the fort until November 1814, when it was destroyed in the fort and was moved to Buffalo for the last time. The Brits left the fort in 1820, and the fort was left to decay until 1937 when it was rebuilt. People visiting the fort had seen two soldiers walking together, one without hands and one missing its head. The bed of the Captain Kinsley of the King's 8th Regiment on foot, used while staying at the fort for his injuries of the war, and the bed he used is still located in the fort today, that people and tourists can visit. The captain had suffered fevers, hallucinations, and mercury poison when he died. His spirit is said to haunt the bed and the room that he stayed in. Sheets would be found thrown around, footsteps could be heard, and windows and doors would move without anyone being near them. La Boheme Restaurant was a grand luxury 3-story apartment building when it was first built in 1912. The owner was a very jealous man. One day, out of a fit of jealousy, he dragged his wife downstairs to the basement. In the basement, he killed his wife and threw her body into the coal furnace, where her body turned to ash. Many years later, a tenant in the building found the bone fragment, and the owner was soon found guilty and charged with murder. In 1982, the apartment building was converted into La Bonne Restaurant B&B. Staff and guests staying at the B&B hear sounds of dragging on the stairs, strange flickering of lights. Bed sheets have been pulled off beds in the middle of the night. In 2018, the Le Bon home closed and is now known as Gilbert's Block. Fort Garry Hotel was built in 1913 by the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway in order to give accommodations to the upper-class railway travelers. In 1920, a newlywed couple was staying in the hotel. The woman told her husband she had a headache. Her husband had gone to buy her some meds from the nearby store, and as he was coming back, he was hit by a horse-drawn cart. When the woman found out about the accident, she hung herself in the closet out of grief. Resident guests of the hotel have said they heard creaking floorboards as if someone was walking in and around the room, wet, watery steps coming from the bathroom, and coat hangers moving in the closet of room 202. The Winnipeg Free Press reports a sighting of blood being oozing down the walls. And while Slapper, the Canadian Liberals MP, felt someone getting into the bed while she was sleeping in one of the rooms. Well, that concludes our stories of exciting, spooky, haunted Canadian locations that you can visit on your next vacation. If you enjoyed these stories, please feel free to send me one of your stories that you'd like to hear on the podcast at bizarreandspooky@gmail.com. I'd love to read your spooky stories. And thank you for listening, and I hope you have a spooky night. Until next time, bye.